Thank you so much, Eva. Thank you. And you know what's the best of all of that? Monday, I will go scuba diving. Yeah. Isn't that cool? At least for me, that's really cool. So thank you so much for everyone who made it today in the morning. I know after the party, this is always a bit difficult. And depending on how many beers you had and wine and whatever else. And so I'm really amazed you found it. That's good. Thank you. So what you see here is maybe also kind of the direction that Eva was introducing me. So I'm like a coach, consultant, but as you can see here as well, is I'm also an author. And I have been writing books for quite some time. My very first book was the one on Agile software development in the large, so about scaling Agile. However, I wrote that in 2002. It got published in 2004. I'm a slow writer. And not many people were interested at that time. You can imagine. So. And then the next one was on distributed teams. And why I'm saying that is that those books actually are kind of a record of my journey. So I started with Agile way back like in '97 with XP as a programmer, and then moved on and tried the scaling thing, and nobody knew how it worked, but the client situation was just like that. And then I moved on because those large projects, they were also distributed. And then this was my next book. And then I moved on to more the organizational level and looking at a broader view. And there were then those other books like Retrospectives for Organizational Change, and this is maybe the most important thing here today, also the topic I want to talk about today, which is diving for hidden treasures, uncovering the cost of delay in your project portfolio, which I co-wrote with Johanna Rothman. So today I want to talk about increasing productivity by uncovering cost of delay. Now, before I start doing so, I have a question, and I'm also kind of curious if it really will work or not. So if you can go to Menti, the QR code should also lead you there. And the question that you can answer with like single words is, what comes to your mind when you hear increasing productivity? Because that's maybe also a term that's a bit loaded, or almost a statement already. And yeah, therefore I'm curious to hear and yeah, what you're thinking about that. And I'm also curious to know if it's working. Maybe if, well, maybe I watch you and see if people look like they have answered. It works, okay. That's at least something, but what I don't know yet if it's also updating. So there are always two things that are really kind of difficult. And let me see. Okay. I guess some people might be ready by now, and it seems it's not updating, and therefore we do the backup. Yes, I see. Oh, great. And many people have answered a lot. This is amazing. See, I could have waited for a long, long time. Wow. This goes so fast. Okay, what I see is you think of value, you think of focus, of being faster, of efficiency. Better quality was also standing out. Oh, money is what just jumped up on me. You're too fast. Effectiveness, working smarter. Is there anything else? That's pressure. And then just agile, time to market, more work. Ooh, deep work. Okay, there's quite something. I guess I kind of read out everything that's more on the focus, where more people think this is what it is. Very good. Thank you, and you can keep it coming if you like. And okay, and then see the update on PowerPoint didn't work, but it doesn't matter. So thank you for that. And so for diving into the topic, increasing productivity by uncovering your cost of delay, there are actually two topics that I want to really to cover. The first thing is, if we want to increase productivity, what we need to do is we need to know what is our productivity and how much did it increase and how will we know. So we need to measure something. So metrics is kind of a foundation for knowing if productivity is increasing. And so I want to talk a little bit about metrics here. And this might not be a welcoming topic. So metrics, I think, are really difficult in this way that very often what I see in teams is that somebody says, oh, we need to measure your performance. So somebody says that to the team, and most often it's kind of a superior manager, a boss, whatever, wanting to know how fast is that team really delivering or working or whatever the thing is. And there are several difficulties with that. So first of all, if I'm working on a team and somebody else says, I will measure you and how you work, guess what? I'm not super excited about that. This is not what I want. And also, maybe I have a much better idea of what I think needs to be measured in order to understand the productivity. So one thing that you need to keep in mind is for all kinds of metrics that if a measurement is happening by somebody of someone else, and that often means stuff is made transparent, but if that happens without trust, then this is perceived as control. And nobody wants to be controlled. However, we all, well, that's what I'm assuming, but that's maybe not true, but we all, I think, want to improve, we want to get better, we want to learn and kind of understand how we can maybe more productive. And that's often the thing that we come up with in a team. So we decide in the team, like, let's try this experiment and see if we are more productive now. But if somebody else decides that for us, difficult. So the one thing again, if you measure something and there's no transparency, then most likely, on the one hand, it's perceived as control, and on the other hand, probably the data you are getting are probably not meaningful because we can all fake data in a great way. So whatever is measured, we can also fake so that the result is in the way people expect. So what are we measuring? So if I look what people do in teams, there is this one thing that often comes up, velocity. So we are measuring story points or amount of stories or amount of tasks or whatever. The problem with this is, well, you might want to do that actually, but we are talking about increasing productivity here. And this velocity has nothing to do with productivity. Maybe this is the most important thing to remember here. Because velocity actually just means, well, we do something, and maybe we are good in completing this something, and so we earn all those points and so on, but we have no idea if we have created any value, and therefore we don't know if what we have delivered really means we are productive at all, even if our curve goes up and it's all wonderful. Another thing which is also here for velocity, which sometimes I think is funny, that people think, I've seen that in companies, that there's somebody says, well, your velocity needs to go up by 20 points. And, that's easy to do. We just start estimating differently, calculating the points in a different way, and there you see, it's completely meaningless. It might be meaningful. Well, the one hand is maybe you don't need it at all, which is also a good approach, I think. But if you feel like you need it, then you need it more for protecting yourself, for not aiming for too much. But again, still, it has nothing to do with productivity. And the main reason is that the story points or measuring tasks or whatever, in most cases, just say something about output and not about outcome. Not about how usable something is, what a client, a user can do with this, what value it brings for us as a company. Can we really be more productive as a company this way? Maybe yes, maybe no, but just looking at the stories, we don't know this. And one thing, and I might repeat that, not sure yet, one thing is a big problem that I'm seeing is most often we more look at, well, the client or whoever is asking for this and that functionality, let's put it this way. And then maybe we get asked, okay, how long does it take and stuff like that. But we hardly look into what value does this functionality really provide. And what value does it provide for both the user and also for us as a company. And as long as we are not looking at the value, it's really tough to say we increase productivity or we measure productivity. So the first thing is we need to discuss about the value of the various stories. So outcome is the more important thing. If we are now looking at outcome, then still talking about metrics here, what are we measuring or what can we measure? Well, we can measure, for example, the average cycle time. So how long does it take on average for some value creation thing, maybe it is a story, from to do in progress to reviewed and done. So, and what is that on average? And maybe this is increasing over time or maybe not. But this is kind of one thing that we definitely can measure. However, only if we know what value is provided by the thing that goes through that cycle, right? And now this is not the only thing. There is something else, and we had John, I think you're sitting somewhere. Now I see you, yeah. You had been offering a great workshop on that topic on Monday. The value stream comes here into play really nicely. So understanding, first of all, what is our value stream, and then also finding out where do we lose time, and therefore where can we increase productivity, and where are we really fine in doing this. So the way this one is working, and there are various ways how you can create a value stream, and this is actually from real data, a bit adopted, but still. So you see, over the blue line, it's the time we work on something. Below the blue line, it's we are waiting for something. And the V is actually not what people are doing, but more you're looking into, well, in this case, I was looking at a request. So a client wants something from us, some value produced from us. And so when this request comes into our company, then somebody works on that, and I'm really recognizing it. But then what happened in this case, in 4 weeks, nothing happened. Then there was some kind of approval. Well, maybe we work on that, and then another 1.5 weeks of waiting. Then people were looking into, I call this gather requirements. You could also think of different terms here, looking in like, who is impacted by that, what part of the system might be impacted, what kind of stories are behind that, and therefore what needs to be done. And then another 6 weeks are passing. And then finally, we have kind of an agreement. And what you see here, it might be different for you, and maybe you are way faster here. But what you see here in this case, no team has started working on that yet. Right? So we are far away from that part, right, where we say, okay, we are in, no matter if it's a Kanban mode or a Scrum mode or whatever, we have that already on our to-do thing and we start working on it. No, no, no. There are already, I don't know, I haven't done the math, but I guess around like a quarter of a year or so has passed with nothing, really. And this is a great way where we can look at increasing productivity, actually. So it's not only what's happening on the developer side, and I would even argue that there we have done a lot in the past. If you think of continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment, all of that, that's great, that's awesome. Okay, so assuming we know the value stream and we know kind of what we are working on and for how long and so on, then still there are some things that we should perhaps consider, which is if we take the perspective of the user, then we should also learn, if you want to increase productivity, if the things that we have developed are actually used. You probably have heard that from especially the kind of key tools that all of us are using at times, I assume, like Word, where some people say 80% of the features of Word are never used. And I'm not sure if the 80% is correct, but that's probably true for a lot of systems that are created. And so a lot of stuff is never used. And so we need to learn how we find out what is really used and what not. And this way, becoming more productive, because also the stuff that's not used is what we are maintaining over time. It's stuff that we need still to have around, ensuring that the tests are passing, that the system is fast, and all of that. So it takes time from our productivity. And if we never understand that it's not used at all, then what is it? Waste. Right? And so then this is the easiest way to understand more about productivity here, or how we can be more productive. So this is about metrics. So we have several things what we typically measure in an agile team. Some of it is really questionable if it will help us to increase productivity. Definitely looking at the value stream is super important to do so. Then also what you see right now, kind of what is really used, what functionality is used by the clients. And the third thing that comes with all of that is understanding right from the beginning what value does which functionality provide, both for the customer as well as for us. So now looking at analyzing the cost of delay. So there are a few things that we found out. So again, this was work also together with Johanna Rothman. There are a few things we found out that are actually delaying what we are doing. And by the way, there were like several motivations for us to work on this topic. And one of them was, and some of you might know that, there's that book, great book by Donald Reinertsen on flow, and which is exactly on that topic as well. I have read the book, and I'm not sure, maybe I can just ask you, how many people have read that book? Okay, so there are a few hands up. Very good. And I can only applaud you because that book is no easy read. And I know, well, maybe I should have also asked how many people have that book but have never read it, or maybe started it and stopped on page, I don't know, let's say 15 or something. And I I completely understand. So I at least found it was a hard read. However, it's a brilliant book, so I still can absolutely recommend to you read it, but it's not so easy. But this was like one of our motivations, that we saw that this great information is out there, but it's not really in a good way accessible, so we tried to make it more practical when we worked together on that. Okay, now, analyzing cost of delay. Now, first of all, Johanna provided that definition. And the definition she has is, it's the way to think about the revenue you can lose plus the cost of continued development. So, first of all, if a user can use what you have worked on, then you're not delaying it. But if it's not delivered, then there's cost of delay. And if you have started working on something and you're not finishing, well, then you are delaying. And so this is maybe the most typical thing. And this is actually also real data. Not beautiful, maybe in various ways not beautiful. So red shows stuff that team had to do. Green shows what has been done. And then the yellow part is what's in progress. And you see the yellow part is really, especially at the beginning of this graphics here, it's amazingly big. And this is why we always say, like, stop finishing and start really getting things done, right? Stop starting, start finishing. Huh? Come on. That's how it is when you are on a stage, right? You sometimes don't know what you're saying. So here this team started really working on reducing what they had in progress. And still, it's even like on the last bar here, it's way too big. It should be a very, very thin layer. But this helps you really to find out your cost of delay. And the thing is not only what's in progress, maybe going back here, what's in progress is the revenue you lose because it's not delivered, it's not finished, plus the cost of continued development. That's exactly what this is. Right? So it still sits here, and there are various reasons why this happens. So it could mean, well, some teams I have seen, they even had a status that said on hold. So you have like to do and in progress and done, but then there's an on hold for maybe we are waiting for more information. Maybe there's a dependency on a different team. Could be all kinds of stuff. Maybe it is that we don't have the right people here who can work on this, or there is like we need like that one person, and that one person is busy doing other stuff, or whatever it is. So if we start looking into this, we often find that there is really a lot going on that creates that cost of delay. Another typical thing that's creating cost of delay is actually multi-projecting. It's something that some people really like, and it seems still something that people like. So at least I hear that in companies. Oh, and we have that multi-projecting approach. Well, this is now maybe a bit simplified, but nonetheless, it's still also kind of true. So, first of all, I have that claim that multi-projecting delays return on an investment. And what you see here in that picture, these are 3 projects and very simple. They all last 2 months for completion. And if we work on them all at the same time, so in parallel, multi-projecting, then we get the first time the revenue after 6 months when all of them are done. And this is without really considering that probably this will not work out because we work in parallel on stuff and so on. But just let's assume it will run smoothly, and because everything needs 2 months, and so in total the 3 projects will just create the revenue for us after 6 months. Now, if we start looking into not doing multi-projecting, but more like actually prioritizing, oh, what a concept, prioritizing, then we work on the first project and we will get a revenue already after 2 months. No cost of delay here. We work on the second project, and after 4 months, we get also the revenue of that project. And same for the third one. And so this is a different approach, and still so often what I see is that there is, well, people are not ready to really prioritize it that way because they say it's also important, and we made that promise without really considering that by working on stuff in parallel, we are delaying our costs, right? And so this is maybe the most important thing here. Now, I said already, I haven't considered here any kind of task switching or kind of stuff that we will lose because we work on the same thing in parallel. Well, multitasking, actually, from what I learned from research, and there might be newer research out there, I don't know, but it decreases our productivity about 30%. So if we need to focus on one project, and then because somebody else walks up to us or calls us and says, oh, I really need very urgent this and that for that other project, and you need to work on that, then, well, it means 30% of decrease in productivity. So if we can stay focused, and that was one of the term that was standing out when I ask you what comes to your mind, when you think of increasing productivity, focus was one of the first things I believe that became bigger and bigger, where more people said so, and there's a reason for that. It is one of the important things here, really. And what I find also a problem with this multitasking, which is related to multi-projecting, that the people who have the responsibility about deciding what is actually more important are not taking that responsibility. Instead, they are pushing it to the teams, to the developers, and so the poor developer or team decides on most often who is shouting the loudest, or using another term that you brought up, who creates the highest pressure. And therefore, I work on that and not on something else that might be perhaps even better to work on, but we just try to fulfill all of those requests. So the thing is, the prioritization is happening at a completely different level, which might not be the level which has the most information about why that project is more important than a different one. And the reason should be because of value creation again. Okay, so what else is causing cost of delay? One definitely has also to do with prioritization, by the way. Experts. With experts, the more experts we have in the team, the harder it will become in the team to work on stuff in priority order. If we know what creates the highest value, or what is it we need to focus on, and people took the time to prioritize, but then we have experts on the team, then it might just mean things are piling up, like in this middle arrow. So imagine these are different people working on stuff, and it just piles up for the person who is an expert, and therefore whatever we have done in terms of prioritization is completely lost and forgotten and ignored. So this is also a great leverage to understand that, well, experts are actually a cost of delay here. Well, what we need to do is to understand better how we can help each other, how can we collaborate, how can we learn from each other, and therefore spread the work out better, and we can really work as a team on it. So it's more like in, well, at least some cashiers are like that. There's just one line you are standing in, and then whichever cashier gets free, this is where you're going to. And not the thing that you always think, oh, I guess I've chosen the wrong line. I'm here waiting and they are moving quickly. How come? This is annoying if you're standing there yourself, but it's not necessary. And actually, having said that, I at least know from my experience, it is never possible, maybe it's also not a goal, that everyone in a team can do everything in the same quality, with the same expertise and all of that. So at least I don't see this, at least not in systems that are not just simple. And this still doesn't mean that we have only individuals who know exactly one thing. What it means is that, well, we have to work on that. We have to work on transferring the knowledge from one to the other so that it's broader in the team and not really sitting in one head, which is also, not sure if some of you have heard of this. So in XP, this was always called the truck factor. How many people have to be hit by a truck to bring the project on hold? Sometimes it is one. You could also maybe use a more positive example, which is how many people need to be on vacation in order to bring the development on hold. That's maybe a better picture, but way back when we were talking about being hit by a truck. And that's why it was called the truck factor, but holiday factor might be better. Yeah, so that is really one area to work on. And so the thing that's reducing cost of delay is sharing knowledge, ensuring more people understand more stuff of what we are doing, how we are doing it. And most of my rule of thumb is everyone should understand at least 2 or 3 different kind of technologies, the main parts that we are doing. And everything we are doing, every technology needs to be understood by 2 to 3 people, so that you have at least that a little bit broadened out or flattened out. Okay, so this is the thing about experts. Now, coming to a different topic, which is quality. Certainly, all technical debts will create a cost of delay, because we will be slower in creating new features, new functionalities. We will probably, well, if we are not knowing how this works, or we are touching something and it all hell breaks loose, then maybe this is not the way to be productive. So working on technical depths, and it might be in your Agile primer or something, is also one way of increasing productivity. However, for me at least, this is also what I've seen in some of the teams. There's also a flip side to it. And the flip side is, gold framing, perfection. Then we need also to question sometimes what kind of quality is really needed for the thing we are working on. Needed both in terms of what quality is requested, needed from the client side, and also what quality is needed for us to keep working on that system. But there are limits. Well, we always can make it better, prettier, even more understandable and whatever. But if that's not needed, Then what we really also need to know is what is our max investment in here? And this comes back to what I said earlier. So we need to know what is the value that we are creating here. And I'm not sure, maybe you're further than my clients, but this is typically a completely new discussion. That when we look at a backlog, that we now start talking about the value it creates and not so much of what people think, how long it takes, how many points or whatever. This is, I hope I said that, this is meaningless for productivity. So we need to have discussions on what value do those things provide that are in the backlog. And then together with that also, well, what value it provides for the customer, what value does it provide for us, and therefore, how much are we willing to invest in that? And this then comes together with, okay, what's the level of quality we can actually create for that? What is it? And again, so it might be really highest quality ever, but maybe not. And being very honest here, so one company way back, I was still employed at the time, so it was in the 90s. I got independent in 98. So I was employed by a company who really got bankrupt because of perfection. Because there was never kind of the right time where people said, oh, we can deliver that. And now remember Johanna Rothman's definition of cost of delay? Well, it's not only not creating revenue right now, it's also costing while we keep developing. So it does these two things, and therefore also quality can be something. Okay, then starting right now, and now I'm not sure if I will create more enemies than friends with my statement here. So the one thing maybe you're fine with. So let's start with the one I can imagine you're fine with. So what I see some teams are doing is, well, not starting right now, but coming up with ideas how we can call that thing before we start. So there's the sprint zero is a typical thing. But also towards then, before we deliver, there is like a release sprint or however that stuff is called. It's a cost of delay. Why are we not starting right away? Why do we need a sprint zero? Why not saying, well, okay, it's not big what we aim for delivery, because while we deliver the first thing or work on the first thing, we have also to build up some parts of the infrastructure and all of that. So this is part of doing that, and probably it takes way more time than working on something that we can deliver. But still, start with the first sprint or whatever your favorite approach is and deliver something for also getting feedback. So you might not be able for the very first sprint to deliver something that's usable, but at least it's usable in a way for getting feedback on what you did. And if you postpone that by having sprint zeros, and sometimes I see that sprint zeros are even at least twice as long as regular sprints or so on, I often feel like people are scared to get started. Okay, now to the other topic here, where I said maybe more enemies than friends. Definition of ready. Definition of ready, well, maybe there's one disclaimer. Perhaps sometimes it does make sense. I hardly have seen it making sense. Most often the way I see definition of ready, so for people who might not know, so it's kind of an agreement in what state something needs to be before we start working on it. Maybe a rough definition, but still. And the way I see it's used is, well, then something ends up in the backlog of the team, and it seems like we need to work on this, and then the team says, well, but it doesn't adhere to the definition of ready, and therefore, what's going on? We are kind of throwing the bag over the wall, so it sits again with probably the product owner, whoever, who needs to work on that and really making it ready. Well, aren't we one team? Isn't it our thing to work on the stuff and also to learn about what's needed in order to develop it, to deliver it? So it should be always a joint thing. It's a collaborative thing. And it's not the idea of like kind of pushing responsibilities from here to there and, well, you didn't really work on it, so it's ready. No, maybe we didn't work on it, so it's ready. We didn't collaborate on it to make it so that we can really work on it and develop it and deliver it. So again, maybe you're using it in a different way, and that might be helpful for you, but at least what I would like to kind of give you as a homework, at least question if it's really helping you. And in which way is it helping you? And is it maybe not decreasing productivity because it's delaying the work? And again, I'm not sure. Now you don't like me anymore. I can sense that. Okay. So, a different topic, maybe more favored, is taking time to improve. So there is a saying in German, I know from other countries it sometimes has a little bit a different flavor, but I know the picture speaks to the German idiom, which says, oh, we don't have time to sharpen the saw, we have to saw. And I know that was one that was sticking with me. In Texas, it seems they're saying, we don't have time to build the fence, we have to chase the cattle. Well, with all the cattle on the field, I can imagine that this speaks more to people. So sometimes it is, we kind of know what needs to be done. It could be something around technical depth. It could be something about even like improving our build times, or I don't know, having a better test base, whatever it is, or the way we are collaborating, or, well, other stuff I've mentioned also, the knowledge transfer. So often we know what we need to do to improve, but we are not doing it because we are so busy working. That is this, taking time to sharpen the saw, although we have to saw, right? And of course, what comes to mind here are retrospectives. They are kind of the classic where we find out what needs to be improved. However, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to wait for a retrospective to start improving something. That's also maybe a cost of delay that I see at times. So, well, we know exactly, but then, well, the retrospective will only happen in 10 days. So let's start doing it. Let's start improving it, getting better with what we are doing. Okay, and I am not sure if I'm way too quick, so I hope on questions, but I'm not yet done, but I guess I'm soon. You all know that picture. But what I sometimes hear when talking about cost of delay, that people say, well, isn't here the potentially shippable product increment, or maybe we really ship it, then this is the thing that's means that's our productivity, or I'm not sure if anyone has seen the next slide, actually. So I guess everyone has seen this slide before. But what about this one? Ooh, this is where I'm coming from, very chaotic. However, it's kind of the same thing, and even also here, we have here at the whatever end it is, like acceptance tests and any kind of approval and a small release. And my point here is that sometimes I hear people asking, when I talk about cost of delay, like, okay, but what about the delay during the sprint, because we are only delivering at the end of the sprint, going maybe, oops, here, right? The end of the sprint where we have the shippable product increment. Now the thing is, at least maybe I make it easy, easy for me. I don't see that this is bound to any iteration or sprint whenever we deliver. So having more a Kanban approach that you deliver when it's done, that's also increasing productivity and reducing your cost of delay. So don't wait for whatever event or happening or anything, but deliver. If you are delivering it, then you are at the stage where you really, don't create that cost. So, wrapping up, and hopefully that last slide showed that as well. So in essence, what Jesper Ottersen once said, you have to release it or no one can use it. And if you are not releasing it, of course, you can't realize any revenue at all. So that also relates back to that definition from Johanna, right? So as long as it's not out and used, well, it's not in production, and therefore we are not productive. And with that, I do hope for questions, and I hope there are some.
And
Thank you.
And we have many questions for you, Jutta. And I do encourage you to use Slido, as usual, hashtag #ABBA2020. Please choose the pink room, then I will have those questions here. And the mostly voted question is, if you show how it is not necessarily the best way to measure, so how are you going to measure value in your features? What is the best approach?
Great question. So what we have started doing in several teams is coming up with the value for the features, for the stories, so even on story level. Actually in a similar way as planning poker, but not looking at how long it takes to get it done, but what are the different opinions of people, what kind of values it brings. And, well, we need at least some developers, maybe all, that's also fine in here, but this is not everyone we need. We need people who really, well, understand definitely the client. Maybe we do in our team. We definitely would also need somebody who knows what kind of value this brings for the company. So really product management, maybe sales, maybe marketing, maybe really completely other people who can define the value. And so then we are working with that kind of, like in a planning poker style. There are various ways for that. Actually also, of course I have to say that now, also in that little book on diving for hidden treasures, you could also think of kind of a monopoly money, and everyone has that amount of money, and then you distribute it over the different features, which makes clear not only what value you think it brings, but also the investment you want to take in that. And again, I think this is way more important than understanding how long it takes. And then you ask about measuring. Then, of course, when the thing is done, then this comes together with what you at first also guessed, kind of what is the value that you think it brings for us and for the client. And And then there was a thing about like the success failure where I said, you need to go into the perspective of the user or understand that if it's really used. So if it's then not used, you haven't created any value.
Regarding Monopoly Money, I need to share an anecdote, because when we had a workshop with Monopoly Money, it was copied by some of the stakeholders, so they can have more. So make them unique. Make them unique. Another question is about this slide with an expert, when we have an expert in the team. And Damian asked, what can we do as a coach, as a Scrum Master, if there is people reluctancy to learn new things in the team? They don't want to.
Did I have that discussion yesterday? I think yesterday in the bar. That's where always the best discussions are happening. So my first answer is what I also said there. So it's a quote from the bar discussion. And it's also a quote from a great friend and colleague of mine. I guess most of you know her, Diana Larsen, who says in this times often, well, I'm not in the convincing business. So that's maybe one of the things. But it's not all. So you said, like, I don't want to learn something new or something. Yeah. So then, really, I'm not sure. Are you in the right job here? Maybe not. Maybe not, because IT is all about learning. Things are changing all the time. We have new technologies, new techniques, new programming languages, new libraries, whatever. And so that is maybe the wrong thing. And the thing that I often try first is, well, maybe we can find out what is, using a term from, I think Dave knows that better, chaos theory, I think, like what is attractive to that person? What's the attractor for that person? And maybe we can build that attractor into gaining new knowledge. Maybe it could even mean that person creates whatever funny software for her soccer club. Maybe there's something in there that we can kind of combine that.
Yeah, and connect with the values. Thank you very much. And now for the tricky question. Every time, estimates. So the public wants to know, are you against or you are approving? Should we use estimates and when?
Actually, I don't have a clear position. I disappoint you here, so I'm not starting any war. I can see both sides. And I have seen really also great success with estimates. However, what my approach always was, actually, I think I even have that in the very first book, because that was always my approach, that the estimates, especially if you do it like planning poker or something like that, for me, are more something for us to gain a joint understanding of what is it that we are building. So the number that falls out, the estimate itself, I always thought that's kind of a side thing. It's not really important. The important thing is the conversation we are having about what we need to build. And something like a planning poker can help us create this joint understanding. However, it's not the only way how we can create that joint understanding. There are other approaches as well, and that's fine too. And if we know the domain and the technology already very well, because we are working on this kind of thing for quite some time, we might not need this at all. So, and that's kind of where I'm sitting. So I see that it has some really great impact and is helping teams, but it's also for some teams it's in the way. And so, well, why would you like to do something that's in the way? If it's in the way, guess what? It's not increasing your productivity.
So maybe a similar but not the same question about the team. Mateusz stated the team that is too busy to listen, to improve. How, as a coach, would you recommend to approach them? What to say to them? Any advices?
So what I sometimes have seen is that the thing about improving, that it comes more from the Scrum Master than from the team. And then we are talking in a similar way as I talked about metrics at the very beginning. So if it's not, well, if somebody tells me, Jutta, you really need to get better in whatever, and on the one hand, I don't have an interest in that whatever, and on the other hand, I might see completely other stuff that I think is more important to get better, then probably I will not focus on that thing somebody else is telling me. So the point is, I need to have the buy-in for the, and I is here, the team, the buy-in for what needs to be improved. And so the thing is, as a Scrum Master, you might see stuff that should be improved, but maybe that's not the highest priority for the team, and therefore enable the team to find out what's hindering them in making progress and being productive. And then they come up with an idea. And actually this, I'm not sure, long answer now. This reminds me as well of how I sometimes see people start with Agile. So there is maybe a Scrum Master, maybe a trainer, maybe something, and somebody in the company has decided we do that Agile thing, and then there is a training, and let's say if it would be me, I get in and say, well, I can tell you this is how it's working. That's not a good approach. The approach should be, and this is how I typically do that, I go in and run first a retrospective because I want to learn what is it that's working for them right now without an Agile approach. And what is it that we should really keep? And what do they think really doesn't work and therefore should be changed? So the thing is, like with, well, it is improvement as well. If somebody kind of from outside thinking, I know what's good for you, I'm not motivated to do that. I need to believe in it myself.
I'm willing to use your metaphor again. So as a scuba dive master, you recommend that a Scrum Master will go into the water with the team? Is that right?
Yes, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. And yeah, for me, this was really shocking when I first thought about that analogy, that really, as a scuba dive master, you have the responsibility for a group of people, but if the education would be the same as for the Scrum Master, I would have never been in the water before. How can I be responsible for a group of people this way? And luckily, the education is different there. But maybe it should also be different for a Scrum Master, but that's a different topic.
Thank you. And this is a question which is connected with yesterday's keynote, Clerk's keynote. I will read it literally. Yesterday, we heard about feature teams and not owning the code, but getting to know area when it is necessary. It is efficient. Is it efficient? And what about motivation?
To have feature teams? Definitely. For me, this is also key for, well, definitely also when you scale, but for, well, increasing productivity means, I hope that's what everyone understood, is we create value and deliver that value. But if we are not working on a feature team, it's super hard to create value fast. Because everyone is just developing a piece of the value, and then we are trying to bring it together, and probably it's not fitting together, and so it's delaying even further. So absolutely, this is kind of the, probably the foundation for value creation.
This is a tricky question from Anonymous. So I will try to start that we are talking about the metrics on the team level, and also we are talking on the metrics on the management and the purpose of those metrics. So the question is, would you say that metrics basically make sense just for the team? It can monitor its own progress, but are not really something for management?
There are different ways I can understand that question. So first of all, the one thing is there are metrics inside a team that I think shouldn't be of any interest for management. It's from like what's happening inside the team, how the team has decided to improve. And so that could be one way of understanding that question. Then there are also some metrics where it's important to report on it also because maybe some action needs to be taken because we see we will not be able to deliver any kind of promised value in whatever when the client needs that or so. Therefore, it needs to also be going outside the team. And then the other way, I can understand the question, but I'm not sure if this was meant. Definitely, you could also think of metrics on the management level, so which is maybe not even connected to what a team does. So it's not only thinking of metrics for an Agile team, you can think of metrics on all levels. And just saying that word metrics, it really doesn't sound so friendly. However, with metrics, we know how we improve. And if we think about continuous learning, continuous improvement, then it sounds much better. And if we don't measure it, we don't know if we really improve and if we keep learning. And this is true for everyone, no matter if it's team or management level. So I don't know exactly where that question was, but I hope I answered them on all levels.
So maybe we can ask, maybe an author of this question would like to comment. Is it answered?
Well, if you are anonymous.
Yeah. Just checking. Okay, so going to the another topic, which is OKRs. Olga is asking about any experience in proper use of OKRs to boost productivity and value. I see my company spending days in workshops to define OKRs for a quarter. That cannot be right.
Yeah, this also sounds like it's more decreasing productivity than increasing it because it's kind of wasting time. Also with OKRs, I sometimes see that they are defined by someone for someone else. However, just the general thought of OKRs that you kind of align with the value creation of the environment you are in, which is your company, I think that's important. Because the value, I believe I said that, the value that we are creating is not only for the client, it's also the value we are creating for our company, and therefore it should be also aligned with that. The question probably is how is it defined and done there, and it seems it's too complicated in this example.
Thank you very much for this keynote. That was fantastic to look at these fundamentals. Jutta Eckstein. Thank you so much.